Can everybody hear me? That's a good step. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome to RJ Julia's. My name is Mary, and I, along with Jackie, my fellow event hosts, are your hosts for the evening. Tonight, we'll be hearing Deanna Raybourn and Lauren Willig. They're going to have a dramatic entrance to the stage for us. Deanna, as many of you know, is the author of the award-winning New York Times best-selling Lady Julia Gray series and the Veronica Speedwell mysteries, and many, many more historical fiction and mystery novels. Kills Well with Others is her latest title and is a follow-up to her popular book, Killers of a Certain Age, just released last week. So I think all of us are pretty anxious to hear what Billy, Helen, Mary Alice, and Natalie have been up to, right? Or maybe who's read it? What? Very quick readers. It's been less than a week. I'm very impressed. Oh, the other one. Oh, okay. Right. I'm still impressed. You're all very impressive. Lauren is also an award-winning New York Times bestselling author. She's written more than 25 works of historical fiction, including 3 books with friends and fellow authors, Beatrice Williams and Karen White. Her latest solo work, The Girl from Greenwich Street, was also just released last week on the 4th, same day. A novel about Alexander Hamilton, Aaron Burr, and America's first murder trial. So I'm pretty sure that RJ Julia's is the first stop on both of their book tours. So and with a little note about logistics. So at the end, there's going to be time for questions. So think of your questions. There'll be a book signing line. And if you don't have a copy of the particular book that has just been released or a lot of the backstop, you might want to get, your whole collection. We have those for sale after the event as well. So again, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your support here at RJ Julia's. And let's welcome Lauren and Deanna.
Hello.
Everybody, thank you for coming.
Hello.
What this old movie, the sound effects, the scraping chair. What these 2 books have in common? The answer is, well, I was gonna say absolutely nothing, but you're right.
This is actually just an excuse for Lauren and I to hang out together. We have known each other how long? Did we do the math?
We did not do math.
We did not
have
do
to
the
do the math. Let's not do the math.
My daughter was probably 12 or 13 when we met. She's 30 now.
Yes. So
So-
you guys can do your own math. We have known each other long enough to go off to college and drink with a fake ID. It is, I mean, our friendship can legally drink. When Deanna was writing the Lady Julia books and I was writing the Pink Carnation series, we were both writing swashbuckling adventure and romance-filled historicals. And so we and our third musketeer, Tasha Alexander, were constantly on the road together.
We were. We ended up, I think we went to Jersey one time.
Yes, that was entirely accidental.
We're in Connecticut though, so. And just as a side note, before we get into all the good dish, thank you so much, not just for coming out to support us, but for supporting your local independent bookstore. You are so lucky to have this facility. I don't have one in my town. And it is amazing to see a store like this that you can tell is really the centerpiece of the community. So kudos to y'all for supporting them and for shopping independent, because Lord knows we need it.
And then you can buy some of these chocolate bunnies over here. We were trying to figure out what on earth assassins and Alexander Hamilton might possibly have in common.
Well, my assassins could survive being shot at.
Well, exactly. And well, Alexander Hamilton didn't, so that's the thing about them. We decided they're very resilient. They get knocked down and they get up again. So it's like Alexander Hamilton, assassins, and Chumbawamba.
They are not throwing away their shot. No.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, what?
I was going to be reading about him, so I didn't want to.
I'm sorry, this is
my
brand new
opinion.
information.
We were gossiping mostly about other authors in the car, the 3 hour car ride on the way up. So we never actually got around to talking about the books.
Yes.
Well, my daughter has seen Hamilton multiple times, so I feel like I've seen it vicariously. Because if anyone else here has a tween child, you know how they pound you with that information, and they will sing at you. But you also know if you have a tween child, you're very good at muting them out.
Okay, so tell me, since you are not like Lin-Manuel'd up, tell me your view of Hamilton then. How does he come across in the movie? Girl, I'm here.
I feel like we should be talking about you and your assassin.
No,
so.
we're starting with you.
Interesting ploy here. Actually, that was okay, so Hamilton in 1800, this is 4 years before the fatal duel. A young woman's body has been found in the Manhattan well, and a young man has been accused of her murder, a carpenter who lives at her Quaker cousin's boarding house. And the whole city knows, they absolutely know, partially because the papers are reporting it, and partially because handbills are being distributed throughout the city telling them that Levi Weeks seduced Elma under promise of marriage and strangled her and dumped her in the well to avoid having to put a ring on it. Now, unbeknownst to many, although he is a humble carpenter, Levi's older brother is a wealthy and influential contractor, and he quickly assembles a legal dream team made up of Brockholz Livingston, the most vicious criminal lawyer in the city, Aaron Burr, and our old buddy, Alexander Hamilton. Now, there's a weird story about Hamilton that goes with this book. Because the story, Hamilton is really busy. I mean, Hamilton's always busy, who are we kidding? It is, but this is January of 1800. Hamilton is Inspector General of the Army. He is building an army from scratch. And because he's Hamilton, he doesn't shirk on the details. And he's sending angry letters about how he's been sent hats that are cocked on only 2 sides instead of 3. And people are marching the wrong number of steps a minute because of Hamilton. He's also got a...
I'm sorry, he sounds like a nightmare.
You know, actually, writing this book, I could understand why Burr was frequently pissed off at him.
Which brings us back to my killers. Some people just need shooting.
And both of them need shooting at various points. But anyway, sorry, and then we'll get to your killers in 2 seconds. But the story here is, so Hamilton, he has a very busy commercial law practice because he has uncountable numbers of kids. Actually, you could count them. I'm just lazy and didn't want to do the math. But ranging age from Philip in college down to a teething infant. And the boys are in boarding school in Staten Island, and we all know what school tuitions are like. So he's working like crazy. And then and he's trying to stop Burr and the Republicans from winning the April 1800 New York elections, because everyone knows whoever wins the New York legislature is going to win the presidency. So he's a really busy guy. And he doesn't do criminal law, but he takes on this criminal defense case. And the story that's always told is that Hamilton takes the case because he is in debt to Ezra Weeks for building his country house, the Grange. But there's a slight problem with this story that almost no one seems to have noticed except one legal scholar from the 1950s who flagged it. Hamilton doesn't buy the land on which the Grange is situated until August 1800, 4 months after the trial. He's not in debt yet to a guy when he hasn't bought the land, hasn't hired the architect to design it, and no one's built anything. So the entire story falls through. It doesn't make sense. And the only explanation, again, 1950s legal scholar, posits that Hamilton knows this is going to be the media sensation of the century. And he is not going to let Burr be in that courtroom without him.
No,
And
that's like
Hamilton, on top of it, and one other thing is, he promised his Eliza he was going to build her a house, and he may not have the land yet. But darn it, a good contractor is hard to find. If he gets this guy's brother off for murder, he's gonna build him that house. Hamilton, I think, in a nutshell, inserting himself when he has no time, but inserting himself into someone else's case because he can't bear to be left out, and there might be some advantage. Now, let's move on. Thank you, my dear. So you are juggling not one, not two, but a whole ensemble of 4 assassins. How do you keep them from killing each other and only killing the people they're supposed to kill?
That was a huge departure for me because up until this point, my series have all featured one main character. That's easy to keep track of. You just have her, and then like usually I throw in a hot guy. She has a hot historical sidekick, and that's easy to keep track of. But when they gave me the opportunity to write a contemporary thriller, I said, "Ooh, let's do something different. Let's have 4 of them." And then I started thinking, "You're an idiot."
Was your editor ever like, can we whittle this down to 3?
No, what scared them was the fact that I wanted to write a contemporary thriller. That was the part that they were terrified by. They came to me and said, "You know, we don't have enough books about older women doing kick-ass things."
Amen.
They're right. That was a discussion that was being had around the conference table in New York at the publisher's office. And they said, if we were to get a book about older women doing kick-ass things, which of our writers could write that book? And apparently my name was said by several people in unison at one time. Which was a tremendous compliment, and I took it so. And so my editor said, "Would you be interested in writing something about, you know, older women just doing something really cool?" And I said, "Yeah, I would." And I went off and thought about it and came back about a week later, and I said, "I'd like them to be assassins." And she said, "Oh, that's he said, "I'd like there to be 4 of them." Oh, that's and I want it to be contemporary. And that was the record scratch.
Did she think you were going to do Assassins in a Bustle?
Yeah, she did. And they said, "You can write any time period you want." And I said, "Yeah, and I know the time period. It's 2020. And she said, "Oh, sounds great." And like I could hear the muscle when she said it. But she trusted me. And you know, Lauren and I were talking about this in the car on the way up because we had a lot of time to talk in that traffic. Publishers are small C conservative. They like to run with what works. And if you have a pigeonhole, they love that pigeonhole for you. They love that look for you.
They'll put in throw pillows, they'll put your feet on it.
Absolutely no, because it makes it very easy for readers. It makes it easy for booksellers. It makes it easy for librarians. Everybody knows what shelf you go on. They know where to find you. And so when you want to break out of that, they get very twitchy. And I will credit them to the end of my days with the fact that they let me try something different, because not all publishers will let you do that.
Okay, but Deanna had the best pitch, because I remember we were talking and you said to me, "So I'm thinking of writing this book. It's geriatric Charlie's Angel." Would you read that?
I remember emailing you in a panic because I couldn't figure out how to do multiple timelines. And so I sent up an SOS to you and to Ariel Lawhon. If anybody knows Ariel Lawhon, brilliant writer. And I sent up SOSs to both of you. I actually called her. I respected the fact that you had younger children at home. And there are more demands on your time. And I said, "How the hell do you do this?" Because it was absolutely terrifying to figure out how to do multiple time periods like that, because I've never had to do that before. So Killers of a Certain Age pushed me out of every comfort zone that I had. Number of characters, setting, what they did for a living, because usually my characters are solving murders, not going out and committing them.
But good cause.
Oh my God, it's so much fun to kill people on. Because here's the thing. I've been pissed off since 2016. Yeah. And it happened real quick. I woke up one morning in November of 2016 and I'm still mad. And being able to kill people on the page and had it coming just was so cathartic and so many of you found it cathartic to read as well. And it was very much a zeitgeist situation. And when they asked me to write the second one, I remember thinking to myself, because I'm not very bright, oh, isn't it going to be nice when people pick up this book? It's such a different environment.
You're more with the zeitgeist again than you.
Zeitgeist happening all over. So basically, I should probably stop writing contemporary.
Do not write a third one.
Yeah,
But actually, I want you to write a third one. Can we risk the consequences?
I'd love to write a third one because I already know who I'm killing.
Is this some people need killing?
They only, and see, this is the thing. This is what makes my killers very moral. They only kill people who need killing. They don't kill for fun. They don't kill
Oh,
as
come
a
on, they have
hobby.
fun.
They have a lot of fun, but that's not the reason that they do it. They do it because these are people who've been specifically targeted because the world would be a better place without them. Now, having said that, I do not in any way, shape, or form condone vigilante justice. A further disclaimer, read these books. I'm begging you, do not attempt this at home.
Because you do not want people to form killers clubs based on your books.
Girl, I've literally had toxicology doctors emailing me saying, yeah, that would work. Yeah, so I feel like, I mean, my lawyer's not on speed dial yet, and I don't want her to have to be because she's super spendy. So y'all just keep it tight. Just don't.
So question for you, what was harder? Figuring out how to murder people effectively or the interpersonal dynamics of four heroines?
Oh, the murdering is fun.
Okay.
The murdering is great. That I have a Google search that is going to get me on so many. And I know people that I can email. Like a friend of mine does. He lives in New York City. He does a lot of stunt work, and he has to know certain things for his job. And so I remember when I was writing the first book, I emailed him and said, "Okay, Travis, I've got a knitting needle. I've got one strike, one chance to kill this person. It's got to be fast. It's semi-darkness. Where can she hit her?" And he was like, "Subclavian artery." And I was like, "Tell me more."
Apparently Googling subclavian artery.
I started to put the pieces together and go, okay, so if I do this, then I do this, then I do this. I did not actually have recourse to Travis during this book. I had to do this one all on my own because Travis was busy filming. How dare he? How do I? Yeah, but figuring out the methods of murder is fantastic. The dynamic is between amongst four women is actually much more difficult and terrifying to write. I'm an only child. I didn't grow up with sisters, so it's completely new to me. How do you interact with these women who literally know where the bodies are buried? They know everything about you. They've known you since you were 20 years old. They know all of your worst traits. And they're not afraid to push your buttons sometimes. Yeah, how do you do that?
Okay, I know this is an unfair question, but which of them is your favorite?
Girl, why? Why?
Because I had to know.
Which of them is your favorite?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one.
Yeah. I have a soft spot for Billy, just because she's my POV character. Billy is, I borrowed a name from my favorite great aunt, who is no longer with us and has been gone 20 years now. But she was a force of nature. She was a Texas woman who did not have it easy. But the woman was just grit, down to her bones. And she was Billy altogether is an homage to these really resilient Texas women that I knew growing up, who are part of me. So I borrowed the name for her, and yeah, I have a soft spot for her. Natalie, I would shove out of a movie. Natalie is such a I want to know, how long have you been obsessed with this case? Like, how did this case cross your radar?
Oh, it crossed my radar in a very highbrow way on Instagram.
I was like, I was just gonna say, oh, that's when I was editing the Yelp review.
Yes, I wish I had a really good story. Like I attended this fascinating public lecture, but no, it was because So I am a native New Yorker, and I grew up surrounded by New York history. And I also wrote a couple of books set in the Gilded Age. So I have lots of accounts I follow that feed me pretty pictures of Gilded Age mansions and random tidbits of New York history. And one day, instead of showing me yet another now defunct Vanderbilt mansion, the site popped up a piece about the Levi Weeks trial. And what caught my attention was the wrong thing. Because what caught my attention was that Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton were co-counsel just 4 years before the fatal duel. I thought, wow, that's crazy. And one of the many things I learned while researching this was that no, it wasn't crazy at all. People will say stuff like, whoa, weird thing, what an anomaly that they're co-counsel. It wasn't. They were co-counsel for at least 2 other cases at the exact same time. Yeah, including a very complex commercial litigation, which I won't bore you with, called Le Guin v. Guvner and Campbell, where it's Hamilton and Burr against their Levi Weeks co-counsel Brock Livingston and Hamilton's old buddy Guvner Morris.
God, I love it when you go full on.
Well, also history nerds. I've always had a huge historical crush on Guvner Morris, the American Scarlet Pimpernel, but we can talk about him. No, but seriously, he rescued French aristocrats during the Revolution. Actually, it was almost the next book, and that wasn't, but we'll talk about that later. But anyway, but there were only like 50 members of the New York bar at the time, so they had to play nice whether they wanted to or not, because they were all co-counsel on all sorts of things. But the coolest thing about this case, what really drew me in, was that it's America's not first murder trial. People have been murdering each other since the moment they came over. It's America's first fully recorded murder trial. Because the clerk of the court, William Coleman, had learned this cool new thing called shorthand. And he was like, wouldn't it be fun if I take this all down verbatim and then publish it? And it's a crazy trial. It lasts 2 days, which was unheard of at the time. Trials didn't last 2 days. At 2 a.m. of the first day, they're like, what do? We can't look. The jury are like, we want you to go home. And the judge is like, we can power through. And in the end, there's a common law rule that once a jury is sworn, you can't let them disperse. And this is not usually a problem, because this is like to keep people from wandering off for lunch. Trials do no more than a day. And they finally make them sleep on the floor of the picture room of Federal Hall. They bring them blankets and refreshments. I think the only reason they wind up the trial at 3 a.m. the following day is because no one wants to spend another night on the floor of the picture room. But there are these intense, very long days, and all of this crazy stuff happens on the stand. So I couldn't resist. It was a historical rabbit hole. I pulled up the transcript, which is publicly available. It's 99 pages long, and it is like Law and Order 1800. I mean, twists, drama, secrets, lies, adultery, people blurting stuff out on the stand and being like, oops, wait, please forget I said that. And Burr trying to undermine each other by having conflicting defense theories and interrupting each other. There's all sorts of drama. The defense requests that one witness be barred from the courtroom while another witness is talking. This witness breaks back in, hovers behind the other witness, and has to be dragged out by the bailiffs. You cannot make this stuff up. So I fell in love with this transcript. I fell in love with the voices, because it's not like modern trials where I was a litigator once. You prep people. You tell them, don't say too much, answer the question and nothing but the question. Keep it brief. These guys were not keeping it brief. They are asked questions and they monologue. And the voices are so strong. And you get such a sense of Elma's cousin, her cousin's husband, all of these side characters who drifted in and out of Elma's life, many of which might possibly have had reason to kill her. So anyway, that's how I got into this case. A random Instagram post led me down the rabbit hole to this transcript, and I was hooked.
Love it. Yeah, love it.
So should we get open to, are we at audience questions?
Yeah.
Questions. 4 minutes.
We're all enjoying.
Cows come home. And we were excited, or we both like cows.
I don't, do you guys have any copies of The Author's Guide to Murder?
Yes.
Okay, if you have not read this book, I strongly encourage you to do so.
Deanna's just saying that because she's in it.
I almost wrecked a character's marriage in this book, and I'm not finding this out because I was saving the book to read. Because it came out when I was on deadline and I wasn't able to read for pleasure. So I was like, let's see it as a treat. So I turned my book in 3 weeks ago and I opened Lauren's book and I'm cracking it and I'm like, she name checked me and I almost wrecked the marriage. It's
To be fair, she doesn't wreck the marriage intentionally, and the marriage, I mean, spoiler, the marriage survives. She just posts a picture from VoucherCon, which you would do. Admit it, she would. Which she would do.
Yeah.
We agree on this? Yes. Yeah, I think we got your voice right. So I will say, if there's any book I should be on tour with Deanna about right now, it is not The Girl from Greenwich Street. It's
No,
the author's
I'm
guide to
not.
murder. Yeah. She is literally this putting you in, but it's also because it's about 3 authors who wind up being accused of a murder of a male author on a remote Scottish island, and they have to team up even though they can't stand each other to go and clear their names so they don't wind up in obscure Scottish prison.
Yeah. And there are peen jokes in it.
There's all sorts of target.
See, we have a testimonial from the.
I like the cameo too.
I found out because a reader tagged me. I was like, hey, did you know? You were in this book? And I was like,
Okay, anyone who read it, was that cameo or was it not true to Deanna's character? But anyway, I really think the 3 authors from Author's Guide to Murder should totally go on retreat with your 4 assassins. They have so much to
Oh
do.
my god.
They would last the first night. They would not last the first night. Yeah, so shall we open it up now?
Yeah.
Safe space.
Are you afraid of getting us going again?
We have a question in the front row, yes.
Hi, it's so wonderful to meet you guys. I want this kind of like a 2-parter. So do you do this full time, like writing full time? If not, how do you manage working full time in with your writing?
Or
I do this full time. I have done this full time for quite a while. So the way I manage it is I get up in the morning and I put my butt in the chair and I write. And I'm lucky enough that I'm actually I'm the breadwinner in our family. So I'm very fortunate. I have a great support system and I can do this. And thanks to fine people like you buying my books. I can do this. So, and I mean, right now more than ever, supporting artists and enabling us to do what we love to do. It is a huge privilege to be able to do this without another job.
Yeah.
And for probably the first, 15 years of my career, my husband was the one with the insurance. You know, he had the job that had the insurance and so, because like you understand exactly what that means in this country. And you know, now it's different and that's amazing and wonderful. It's a huge privilege, but it's a privilege I'd love to see a whole lot more authors be able to have.
I know you read these very chilling articles about musicians starting OnlyFans accounts in order to be able to fund their tours. And, you know, really no one wants to see us on there. They do, I don't know. I also write full time, but my strange experience was I got my first book contract, 22 years ago in my first semester of law school. And I wasn't going to give up the chance to write a second book. It was a 2-book contract, but I also wasn't going to drop out of law school after just a month. And so I was like, fine, I'll just figure it out and muddle along. So I wound up writing, my second book, my 1L year, my third book, my 2L year, and my 4th book, my 3L year. So, and I had I'm running out of math. My 4th book came out my first week at a law firm. And so it was just a crazy roller coaster. And I managed to juggle being a lawyer and being an author for a little under 2 years. And thank goodness I didn't have kids back then, or it would have been impossible. It's very funny because at the time I was doing a conference circuit and people were asking me to speak on panels about how to juggle work and writing. And I would say useful things like use your downtime to work on like plotting and busy work. Or you can hoard your time on the weekends, because that's what I would do is I would be in the office crazy hours during the week, but I would try to block off my weekends when my BlackBerry didn't buzz. This is how long ago it was. I had a BlackBerry. And so I would write, at one point, I think I wrote, 40,000 words over the course of a single weekend, because they would be these mad writing marathons. But
Unstable.
well, there was a lot of caffeine involved. Yes, yeah.
There we go.
It was all
I'm
future
actually
comment.
losing my voice right now. You made me talk so much on this drive.
Oh, yeah, like we're
It's going. It's going.
Have some water.
I know.
I agree. Anyway, at one of these conferences, someone raised their hand and said, but how do you juggle writing with kids? I didn't have kids yet. And so I sort of blithely said, well, I think the same principles apply. And I've been thinking about that ever since, because around the same time, my 10th book came out right before my daughter was born. And I knew all these other authors who lied through their teeth and told me, you can write while the baby naps. I don't know who their babies were, but I firmly believe that naps were something that happened to other people. So I have an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old. And so for the last 11 years now, I have been technically a full-time writer, but really juggling. Deanna knows, she's heard all of the complaints. Juggling the kids and writing, which honestly, I think it's a lot harder than being a lawyer and writer.
Yeah, well, there was an email you sent me literally 3 weeks ago saying, how did you do this?
Yes.
Because when we met, mine was much younger than she is now.
It's the crazy thing is when we met, her daughter was the same age my daughter is now, and I was answering questions about the same principles apply. With no clue.
The people that you shove you into traffic.
I was not murdered on the spot.
We had a question in the back, I think.
Oh, I was just curious if, there are any movie or anything, I was thinking your first one would be excellent.
So the question was about, an adaptation, film or TV for Killers of a Certain Age. If there were, I wouldn't be able to talk about it.
She might have to kill you. Well, the joke is it's sort of TV deals are kind of like pregnancy. You don't talk about it until you can actually see it.
No, we were joking about this on the way out because, the Veronica Speedwell books were being shopped around last year. And, the response that the couple of showrunners were getting from everybody was, oh, we love this, it's a great, well, we can't afford it. And in January, I sat down and finally watched Bridgerton on Netflix and went, Bridgerton's got my money. But they're super fun. If you haven't watched them, you can enjoy some,
But all
what do we call it, revisionist or, not revisionist?
I call it Romancelandia.
Alternative
Yeah.
history, alternative history, yeah, it was great fun. But that is actually, it's a huge block to any of Lauren's historicals being made or any of my historicals being made, because they are far more expensive than contemporaries. So those projects are always gonna be a lot more of a long shot than contemporaries. And even if you do sell an option to a contemporary project, so many things have to go just right. With the right people, the right timing, everything else, that actually seeing something is, I can't even remember what the odds are at this point. It's like less than 0.5%.
Right, and you really don't know until it's on the screen. I mean, I've had
And
various,
that's if they
project,
sold the
yeah.
option, it's still that low.
I'm always so confused when I see authors announcing their options, because it's like, oh, honey, I'm glad you it's your option for the past 20 years. And yeah, it's nice they give you option payments, I appreciate it, but the odds of it
Julia
being,
Grace
yeah.
is under option for
I think
ages.
there was that almost got made.
Mhm.
Well, I had a friend who they had actually cast, they had picked filming locations, and then they were like, actually, never mind. And she really thought this was gonna happen, the cameras were about to start rolling, and then they pulled the plug. So I really, until it's on the screen.
Yeah,
I
because
really
even if
don't
they
believe
film
it.
it, that's not a guarantee that it's gonna get picked up in distribution and then it's gonna be there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's always a miracle if something actually appears. That's when you can correct the
That's a good question.
Yeah, how would you feel, each of you, to have your story, your characters, your art changed by screenwriters, directors, etc.
I've had my chance to tell it. The question was, how would we
Yeah.
feel about having our art adapted and being told by these other professionals? I've had my chance to tell the story. The film or TV is a completely different medium. And so their approach to the story is going to be completely different. And if I have sold them the option, then that means I have sold them the right to do with it as they will. And if I'm not open to that and I'm not willing for that to happen, I should not have signed the contract and cashed the check. Because it is their opportunity. My husband directed for quite a number of years, not films and TV. He did some stage work. And I see what's on the other end of it. And it's a completely different approach to the material. Because we are not visual, we are verbal. They are visual. And so it's very interesting to me to see their approach and the choices that they would make and how they would go about telling the story in their medium, which I'm not qualified to do. How would you feel about it?
I 100% agree, and I know so many.
No, you can say dibs.
You did
And-
call it.
And no backseat is
You know,
on against it.
I'll expatiate on it.
Yes.
Okay, will that make it better?
Yes.
I know so many authors who desperately want to be in that writing room where their books are optioned. And, when the first time one of my books was optioned, they asked me, do I want to be a writing producer or a non-writing producer? I was like, non-writing. I do not want to touch this project. I do not want anything to do with it. Screenwriting is a very different skill from writing a book. And I do not know anything about screenwriting. And I'd rather have the people who do it. And also the second thing is, see, here I am developing my own material and not just piggybacking off you. The second thing is, when you are writing a book, you only see the world in your head. You hear the characters' voices you hear. You see them the way you see them. You don't know how your world appears to anyone else. It's that shop-worn old Emerson line. There's creative reading as well as creative writing, but we don't get to see that for the most part because it's happening in your head. And you're each reading a slightly different book, no matter what. But when someone takes your work and they make a pilot out of it, you get to see what someone else sees in your book. And sometimes it's insane and you're like, really? Gosh, I'm glad that one didn't take. And other times it's amazing and you're like, wow, that's what these characters sound like to you.
Yeah, where she's at. I have written a pilot once, and it was the most horrifying writing experience of my life. Like I hated.
Was it for Lady Julia?
No. It was for a completely different project, and it was for a historical series. And I thought, let's do this thing, and it was horrifying. I hated it. I was like, I will literally never do that again. And every time options are discussed and they ask that question, do you want to be a writing producer or do you be a non-writing producer? My answer is always, I'm fine for consultation. They can call me whenever, they can ask me whatever, but I am not putting a single word to paper. I don't want it. I don't want it.
Yep, 100% agree.
Yeah.
Do we have other questions?
What? Just got started. Just popped up here.
Just bring us a bottle of wine and you can say.
And you said you don't read while you're writing, but what are you reading now?
Oh, I do. I mean, there are plenty of things
That's
that I
all you're
read
right.
while I'm writing. There are plenty of things that I read while I'm writing. I will save anything that feels similar in tone or genre to what I'm writing. So I'm very careful about that. Do you want to know what I'm reading right now? I just finished a biography of Pamela Harriman that they have loads of in the other room stacked up, and it's called Kingmaker. Cannot remember the author's name off the top of my head, but it was a fantastic biography. Loved it. She's fascinating. What are you reading?
I am reading something much less highbrow. I am rereading my way through Ben Aronovich's Rivers of London series,
Oh.
which have been described as Harry
We
Potter
read
meets
that.
a police procedural. They're snarky, they're fun. I read them, oh gosh, like 10 years ago or whenever it was. Time blurs when you have kids. But a while ago, and I am enjoying reading them straight through so much. If you also like British police procedurals and magic, I highly recommend these.
Right, I feel a little guilty. Does anyone have anything that they?
Mary, we have one question over here.
It's
Yeah.
not really a question. It's I read, but I'm like, I have my headphones in with Audible books all the time.
That
And
counts.
and I just want to say thank you to both of you for being my favorite annual listens.
She has ways of making you talk.
That book that they've written, we also have many of those as well. So around the corner will be the sign one, you can just get Deanna in the rooms. Get themselves situated. Meet you over there.
Thank you, Madison.